Think of a cruel trick. Think of a trick that fundamentally is going to try to convince you that you're alone, that you're not loved, that there's no hope, that somebody doesn't have your back. You have to be open to charity. You have to be ready for it. If you're used to lying to yourself, if you're used to taking from others, if you have the habit of taking more than you give, when somebody gives to you, it's like your ego will take it, but not your soul. It's uncomfortable. It'll feel uncomfortable to sit with the mistake that you made, with the possible choices that you could have done differently. It's easy to be in that place when you hurt all the time. Psychiatry and psychology worldwide agrees that so far their scorecard for helping people whose compass towards love was fundamentally broken, was fundamentally took from them. And think of taking a child in formative years 0 through 5, when there's so much growth and their neurological system is hooking together and growing and changing and setting in them moments in their future, what they're going to be attracted to in their spouse, what's going to feel most emotionally correct for them. And they'll fight for it. They'll fight for it. They'll feel as though they know it's so true that they will constantly keep self-destructing because they don't choose a healthy discomfort, like running, going for a bike ride, being honest, giving thanks, giving gratitude, accepting charity, accepting people's help, and accepting others' love. Doing the work so that when you look in the mirror, you can love yourself. And the way that you do the work so you can love yourself is be a little different today. Do something a little different today in a different way. And give it your best. If you fail and you gave it your best, you should be okay with that. That's okay. Go try again and go try to be different. So when I was a little kid, I had bones sticking out of my body, compound fracture in my hand, and nobody'd help me. And when I went to school, by then I'd given up on help. That was days and days later. And so I didn't expect anybody to help me. It's just going to be what it's going to be. And I couldn't hold a pencil. So my teacher started yelling at me and treating me horribly, because in a moment of truth, of greater truth than you're comfortable with, if you were abused when you were younger, you're just gonna have this horrid emotional reaction. And there was some of that. And there was some that she just spent years choosing to be a monster, and so she didn't help me. She yelled at me. She broke. My recently dead grandfather had bought presents for everybody and had them all set up in a closet. And then he sat down to take a nap in his favorite chair with a blankie after tending to a garden, and he passed. And then there was a gift, and a gift, when she threw my desk into the hallway, it came out, and then she walked over and she kicked it, and it slammed up the floor. Was that linoleum that curved into the bottom of the lockers. And so when it hit, it was like the 1-2 punch of the wall and the bottom of the lockers. It just went into a bunch of pieces. And I was like, well, I got time to try to put together. And when I just looked at all the pieces and understood how it went together, there was no fixing it. My grandfather was gone. And eventually all the things, the stuff would be gone too. And then the principal was curious why I was sitting in the hallway, and I said that I got yelled at because I couldn't hold a pencil. He's like, why can't you hold a pencil? And I showed him my hand. And he couldn't believe that I told my parents and asked them for help, so he took me down to the principal's office, called my mom, explained to her that she needed to take me for medical help. But there was no answer on the phone. So he sent me home, and he said I had to have a conversation with my parents, and I'd tell them what's wrong. And then the next day he called my parents, and that time there was an answer, and he said, you come get your child right now and take them to medical care, or I'll call the ambulance and be forced to call the CSPCA, right? This organization that supposedly cares about kids. And then somebody takes pictures, and then they force your bones around, and they take pictures again. And they force your bones around. And they take pictures again. And then they put you in a cast, and then they took pictures again. And then you have a cast on your hand. But you also learned that when you most need help, a lot of people are going to ignore you. A lot of people are going to attack you. And so sometimes when you've been experiencing abuse, it's going to be really hard to ask for help. Another thing that's going to make it hard to ask for help is that people that have known you and loved you the most for your whole life will count that for zero. All things they know about you, they will discredit and not count. Because they're going to feel and give in to the lie of the monster that's abusing you. You know, like the principal not believing the student with bones sticking out of his meat sack because his mom was Captain Whataho with the PTO. You know, they're good at it. And so what I learned was that when you get in a fight with a bully, be prepared, and you got to take a beating. You have to be strong enough, healthy enough, and fit enough that you can survive being tortured, that you can survive a horrific beating. Because if you can do that, at some point, everybody in the room, when they feel uncomfortable with your truth, it'll be undeniable. So I gave everything that the mother of my children wanted. I started carrying it up the street as soon as she said and told me that that's what she wanted. I didn't fight on anything. I did back taxes with her because it benefits the kids. If I take from their mom, how do I not take from the kids? Those kids are going to need to reconcile the way that I reconciled and the way that my sister failed to reconcile the fact that they have a portion of monster in them. That part of their compass, part of their inclination is they're always going to feel discomfort when they should feel the most amount of comfort. When somebody says something nice, they're going to feel horrible. When there's a healthy, loving environment, like a Thanksgiving or an Easter with somebody else, you're going to feel wildly uncomfortable. And you're going to need to learn to have faith and to sit with that discomfort and learn to love and appreciate healthy discomforts. And if you can do that, you will unlock a key to a life that's more tremendous than you could possibly imagine. And they will write songs that will be popular about a life that you lived. And there will be no denying it, no taking it away. And it also means when it's time to put your foot down and to fight, you will be clear, you will be present, and you will have done everything you could have to be prepared to give it your best. It gives me no joy that the mother of 4 of my kids spent tens of thousands of dollars of her inheritance to get attention, fueling into lies, with her aunt, her mom, and her sister, to then tell more lies, to like wear wigs and get it on with neighbors at parties and gangbangs, which is part of the reason I fell in love with her. So slut shaming is wrong, and it's also wrong to live in the closet, swingers. I understand it's easy, but I also understand that living in the closet allows a person to have even more room to perpetuate a lie. So then when I go with no attorney, because there's nothing to fight over, you don't fight with a spouse, you don't fight with the mother of your kids, and if she chooses to be horrible, the only way that everybody's going to see it is if I don't fight. And I didn't. And I had conversations with the kids. Dad, why don't you fight back? And should you fight with somebody that you love? No. When somebody that you love is failing most, should you fight with them? Well, no. Well, what's the first rule of leadership? Set the example. So shouldn't you just try to do your best to set the example of what love is? Go be your best. Go, 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 go. Worry about you. Somebody around you that you love setting a bad example. What are you going to do with that? Are you going to rise to the occasion and set a great example? Or are you going to start following their lead? What are you going to do? Go, 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 go. It's been 3 years. And for the last year, coming up on a year now, they haven't been allowed a phone call from me, a hug from me, time with me. Now, when I went to court, first day of court, her attorney said, "You're a drug-addled alcoholic who's abusive to everybody." Meanwhile, I'm the most expensive attorney in the county, and I did nothing to help out my client who was being abused. Nothing to help out my client who was being abused. Nothing to help out their children that were obviously being abused. Sat and did nothing for 3 months while the defendant had 40% access to the kids in that home, which I'm going to later argue is unsafe because there's obviously unarmed firearms hanging off a wall. I'm going to argue that he's a sexual freak. He's been with men. He's been with women. He pretended he didn't understand what BDSM was. How quaint, right? It's amazing how so often when people fail in this way, the projections they give are simply that, projections of how they're failing. But what ended up happening is what became quickly evident is the most expensive attorney is the most expensive because he or she donates the most to the judge. And the judge realizes that's their top campaign donor, and if that attorney doesn't get to bill out, then they're not making money. And if they're not making money, they can't donate to her campaign. And if she can't donate to her campaign, she can't buy a bunch of signs and hopefully get some name recognition when barely any of us go vote. From the uneducated perspective of what makes a good judge. And they don't help because they'll go sit in a back room, off air, off recorded, out of record, and have chit-chats with one another, and then barely ever be willing to do anything out front. Now, the downside of this is, if you give young kids enormous amounts of trauma, you can break them. And psychiatry and psychology worldwide agree that there's no cure for any of the cluster B personality disorders. For people who are clinically narcissistic, histrionic, borderline, sociopath, psychopath. So our government should not be in the business of making more of those. Now, it's happened not for years, but for decades, that when men got taken to court, the mother of kids would make that lie. And it happens, according to Summit County's domestic court, 10% of the time, of which they know 90% of the time the mother's just a liar. But what they don't do is when they hear that claim being made, they don't have alarms go off in their head and go, "Oh my God, we got a 90% liar going on." They go, "Oh my God, we better do everything to save the kids," including making the father answer for charges that have no evidence. So there's no police calls. The evidence is every time I went with my wife to the physician for her pregnancy, my wife was taken to the back by herself and asked if she was abused. Every single time. Now, how rude is that? How horrible is it that you're going to treat 99% of brilliant fathers like an abuser? All of us are abusers. We're all criminals. All of us. You're going to treat all of us like we're criminals because you think that's going to help with what? With what exactly? So instead of being incredibly harsh when you find out that the clean toenails, the clean urine, by the way, my kids were just took from me at that moment. You give us clean toenails, you give us clean urine, you go pay this group over here $40 an hour to be graded as parents. By the way, as a stay-at-home housewife, I don't have running water. I don't have money for food. Where am I going to get $40 for the privilege to get paid to be graded as a parent, of which the court system doesn't even have the habit of reading those reports? I had to argue with the mediator that she should read it. That you took away my kids because of these lies, you should read it. You took away these kids because you disregarded constitutional rights. You didn't give due process. You said, ooh, there's an accusation. You're guilty. Prove your innocence. That is an inquisition. That is a Salem witch trial. If I had had a military background at that point, I would have grabbed a firearm and been at war as an American. You're illegally taking away my kids, putting them in direct harm's way of two child abusers, my parents, one child abuser, my wife's mother, and what I know to be a child abuser, but everybody else wants to pretend isn't, one Rebecca Jeffries. And then, after an attorney is allowed to take money, give no services, not tell me the date, show up, say I don't want to represent him, the judge gives her top campaign donor everything he wanted, even though it's in complete flagrant disregard to the prior actions of the court and all known court evidence. You're just going to marginalize and sweep it away and then pretend I'm a criminal because, after all, you made up an income because the taxes show that I was due spousal support that the court awarded me, that as soon as I didn't have an attorney, the court took away because I couldn't afford an attorney because I'm the stay-at-home housewife. Now, this witch hunt that's taken place against fathers needs to stop. And I'm not moving forward, and I'm not letting it go. And I've tried to give police reports to police officers because there's numerous crimes sitting here. I've tried to do the same to the sheriffs. Apparently, if you speak plainly and blatantly like this, the judge's ass will twitch because she understands I don't have one reason. I have all reasons to go physically take from her everything. And Randall Lowry, and Dr. Smith. And there should be criminal things given to that attorney that stole. The three I listed, when you profiteer off of knowingly committing child abuse, I think it's okay to put you down. As a survivor, as a victim, as a product, as a champion of those that have experienced child abuse, I would judiciously put them down. The fact that you got a master's in the United States Constitution, the fact you got a doctorate in the United States Constitution, the fact you passed a hard test called the bar so that you would serve the people, you sign a piece of paper with your name on it that's notarized saying you'll serve the Constitution, and then one of you stood up in front of everybody and said, I will serve the people, the judge, and then you want to knowingly profiteer off of committing child abuse and not be held accountable because county prosecutors don't do their job, because local prosecutors don't do their job, and you haven't done your job for so long that the only reason this horror can exist is because of it. And the child with the bone sticking out of their hand. It feels really uncomfortable to help somebody who actually needs it. Now, parental alienation is child abuse, period. Can't argue it. It's child abuse that affects 2 generations of my family tree. For what? For what? So the state of Ohio can knock a 3% check on a made-up number they feel they believe? Because if I had what I want, which is 50% of the time with my kids, they don't get the money for child support, which is greater than the money that they would get for spousal support. So we're going to just chase the child support. And after all, if you willfully make a deadbeat dad, the federal government will give you money, and then you can champion yourself as a hero because you've been cutting down on deadbeat dads, and you can get elected. I got a great idea, prosecutors, for you to get elected. Go ahead and put corrupt attorneys in prison. The fact they have a master's and a doctorate and passed a bar means they're more held accountable to a higher standard when they fail the citizenry. I will not be marginalized, and I will not give this up. And the fact that the sheriff was sent to the house means, to some respect, that even the judge understood that there's a ton of reasons to want to do her harm. If that was good enough for the judge to send the sheriff, shouldn't that be good enough for the sheriff to see if there's any valid reasons for why there's so many upset, tirade fathers who are being unlawfully, unwillingly dragged through a witch hunt so that they can watch 2 generations of their family trees be abused in a way that there's going to be given an incurable mental health issue to their kids in front of them so somebody else can profiteer? Now, none of that's okay. So share the message, hit like, and I will make a brief message, less than 30 minutes, every single day until my kids are back in my life. I have a GoFundMe page. This isn't so I can profiteer. This isn't because I worry about what I lost. Even though the mother-in-law, after they got what all they want, the mother-in-law started suit against me to try to take the house that I built for my kids. I didn't just design it. I love Walden. Go build a house on the pond, keep record of everything. What if you could rebuild a house from the position of poverty in a city and make it the most efficient home east of the Mississippi and build it artfully for your kids? Like Thomas Jefferson, let it be a place that shapes you and inspires you as much as you inspire it. A dialogue, put your effort into it, build yourself an anchor. Help it be an environment that inspires the best and the healthiest out of your kids that you teach multiple languages to and walk the kids to school. Now, I needed help. I need help from an attorney. I need help from friends. I need help from people to click share and to click like and to tune in on it. And I promise that every day I will give you my best. And I will be honest and I will share with you. Help my kids not experience another day of child abuse. And if you're one of the 90% that want to lie and cry wolf when it comes to child abuse, then you will be held accountable because you're muddying the waters and slowing down the resources that are available to help those that are actually being abused. And you're knowingly doing it because you'd rather feed off the emotions of the lie than actually be a good parent. And when you do that, you're committing a hate crime and you're showing clearly, undisputable, inarguably so, that you are not fit to be a parent. You are not fit to be in their lives. And as such, the person that will have say on how much time you will spend in their lives will be the parent that took the abuse. The parent that stayed focused on the well-being of the children, who filled out after the divorce was filed, who filled out the paperwork like always for the kids to go to school? Me. The paperwork that my spouse signed, that my job description was stay-at-home housewife, the school that I volunteered to go on the outings with. I wanted to be a dad. I dreamt of being a dad. 3 of the 5 years of my son's life, his father has been illegally stolen from him. I'm not Mexican, so does that mean you don't care? Now, when a local government, a local acting illegal government wants to pretend it doesn't need to answer to federal law, it doesn't need to answer to state law, and the local systems and the state systems and the federal systems have been in the business for years to not hold them accountable, then how are you as a sheriff, how are you as a cop, how are you as a prosecutor not willfully willfully forcing the issue to become violent. Won't I get my day in court if I go kill child abusers? How much faith do I need to have in fellow citizens if I was to go kill people who profiteered off of committing child abuse? You think they'd hold me horribly accountable? Would I finally get to have a day in court where I could have a conversation and be heard? Or do I have to go to court for 2 years and pay 2 attorneys more than enough to solve 2 cases for the privilege to then just have the last one steal from me and everything goes the other way and all the evidence is disregarded and I get zero access to my kids? You gave her in charge of everything and she has cut off phone calls, made no time for kids, done absolutely nothing. Nothing. As has the court system to fix their mistake. As has the sheriff's department to follow up on coming out of my house. As has the police department for not taking in police reports. As has the county prosecutor for never answering me. As has both senators for never answering me. As has my local congressional representative for never helping me or answering me. What the hell are you doing? Know you're loved. And I miss you, Katie, Ella, Leah, and Michael. And thank you so much to my friends and loved ones for liking this and for sharing the message. And I will put 100% of that money that goes to GoFundMe to solving this problem, not just for my kids, but for the great state of Ohio. An illegally acting government entity is not going to discount the United States federal laws of the Constitution, due process, 1,000 years of Western civilization's history, so that they can predate on 2 generations of children so that they can make more money. No, that's not okay. That's never been okay, and I don't need to pick up a weapon because I have the back of every operating United States military agency. They took an oath to look after me. They took an oath to look after my kids, as has the 2 senators. Now, part of changing the law in 2015, making the state a default 50-50, is when courts completely ignore that rule, they need to be held accountable, legally accountable for their shortcomings. And allowing in the great state of Ohio for there to be a made-up rule, sovereignty under the king. It's not called leadership. It's the opposite of that. If you want to argue on a world stage, on a national stage, that you're not held accountable because of sovereignty of the king, then what kind of an American hero would I be? What kind of hero would I be for myself or for my kids that are being abused if I did not pick up a firearm and go violently fight those? Go fight the king. Because I'm American, and we have a system of checks and balances, and I have a system of heroes that did take an oath to the United States Constitution, have stuck themselves in harm's way, and now choose to serve the people further. And they have my back, and they have my kids' back, and although it is slow, woefully fucking slow, after 3 years, I think it's time to help my kids. Hit like, hit share. Thank you for your time as a fellow American. Thank you for your service to vets and current officers and enlisted of our great services. Thank you to our public officials that do their job and take their job seriously. Thank you to the cop that's going to watch this who says, you know, we could start an investigation to an attorney who takes $5,000 and then provides no services. Or a parent who lies in court so that they can have the privilege of becoming an indisputable child abuser. And let's go get those kids. Thank you. My kids appreciate you being a hero. And if you hit like and hit share, thank you. My kids appreciate a hero. And if you donate, my kids and me appreciate you being a hero. Know you're loved.